Hey everyone, this is Tara. So I am here with one of our students at Freelancers on Fire, Erica. And I know most of you are probably used to watching, 10-second testimonials or whatever, but I wanted to have real conversations with some of our students so that you can actually hear their stories, the timeline of how things went, where they're at today. And maybe you'll see yourself in some of these stories and be able to take that plunge if you've been holding yourself back. So, welcome, Erica. I am so excited you are here and we finally get a chance to catch up because you've been so busy running your business. So, we actually haven't had a chance to actually have a conversation and hear more about it. I get the updates once in a while, but I'm excited to actually have the conversation. So, let's go ahead and start at the beginning. If you want to share with everyone, what was your life like before you started your business? I know it took you a little bit after you joined us. It took you a little bit to get started and you had some hesitations and things, and we'll talk about those. But just tell me what were things like for you at that time?
Yeah, thank you. So, first off, thank you for reaching out. I was super excited to hear about, your plan with next steps and how we move forward, how you move your group forward. Obviously, as you know, and anybody who's listening will find out, your program has absolutely taken my life and just flipped it completely upside down in ways that I never could have imagined, and I'm so incredibly thankful for. Um, on Monday, I had like one of the most surreal days for me personally, which was cool. But yeah, going back, I guess taking a step back. So I'm one of those weird people who actually went to college, got a degree, and have stayed in my same discipline for my career. So background is all construction, which obviously doesn't kind of translate well to a digital world. And so I think that was honestly like one of my biggest struggling points is like, I know you and I have talked in the past about I do like my job. Like I really liked what I was doing, but
Mhm.
working for a company and having a boss and having like this sense of duty that I owed them 40 hours of my time. And if I had a kid that was sick, it was like a burden on the company. And I was having to try and, feel like I owed them time back. So, you know, as you obviously know, being a mom changes your whole world. Um,
Mhm.
and so jumping back to Freelancers on Fire, I was just looking through my notes and it's really fun to look at this timeline because the first time I did your free group, I think it was like a maybe like a 3-day class or a 5-day class or something. It was like 30 minutes. I don't
Yeah, it
know
was the
what.
5-day lunch into freedom workshop. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was the free Launch into Freedom workshop. And I did that in the spring of 2022. So just over like 3 years ago now, I did my first free class. And at that time, I was pregnant with my third baby. And I wanted to make a change, right? I knew that this third kid was going to come and make big changes in our family. She did not disappoint. Um, and so I knew that I was going to have something else. So, I was really focused on building a digital supplemental income stream. Um, I succeeded in that, by the way. So I wanted to, when I went through your Launch into Freedom workshop, the area that I focused on was writing. So I ended up like launching my own freelance writing business, had a couple clients, got some paid work, enjoyed it, but it
Mhm.
was still like I liked my job. Like I like construction. I liked it then. I still like it now. Um, and that was the part for me that I was personally getting hung up on, right? Like digital
Yeah.
is great for a lot of people, but for me, I didn't want a full-time digital thing. Um,
Mhm.
and so I know when you and I spoke, you were like, hey, you can still do in-person work, right? Like you can make it on your terms. Um, so let me see, I'm just looking at my notes here. Yeah, so that was like 22, 23. I think that you and I finally kind of came to that. Like I was making progress on the writing stuff, but you were like, "Hey, you don't have to just be all online." And that was like for me, "Oh my gosh, how cool, right? What an idea."
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Do you want me to keep going with my timeline? Or do you
Yeah,
have a
because I was gonna, the next question was gonna be what pushed you to finally say I need something different. So you're like, you're on your way there.
Yeah. So my youngest was born in April of 2022. I'm doing this, balance between going back to my work part-time. We couldn't find childcare, so
Mm,
I'm working like a reduced schedule and we had part-time childcare. So I was working a reduced schedule, paying for daycare, working on my like freelance writing stuff and just absolutely drained. It was so exhausting and I felt like as a mom, I felt like I was failing on all fronts, right? Like I
yeah.
could tell that I was doing all the right things, but
Mm.
sometimes like you get bogged down in it and you just get so discouraged, right? You're like,
And I remember specifically as you're saying this, I remember we had a conversation, we had a call. I don't remember if it was what the deal was, but I remember you trying to have a call with me while bathing your kiddos because you just didn't have time anywhere else, but you're like, I need to make this happen, right? Like I want to make this happen. I need to figure it out. And so I remember you being in the absolute like throes of motherhood and working and do you remember that?
I do actually remember that. Yeah, I think it was a group call or a check-in or something.
Might
And
have
yeah,
been.
I had a kiddo in the bathtub. I think my husband was like unexpectedly working late that night or
Yep.
something. It was like something came up as it always does, right?
Yep.
But yeah, if you make a commitment to something and you're like, I know I need this, even though it's hard. I was just so ready to
Mhm.
get out, to make a change, like I was doing hard things already. So it was like, let's do hard things that are going to make my future easier.
Yeah, so so when you joined like the workshop, did you always know maybe at some point deep down that you wanted to work for yourself, or was it something that was kind of a surprising turn of events as you started having more kids and you wanted to have more flexibility in your schedule?
No, my dream was always to like go work for a big construction company, run big projects. Like I
Okay.
wanted to be the career mom, right?
Yeah.
That was going to be it for me. Then we had this third baby, and she is such a goofball and just she changed everything.
Mm.
Which I think anybody who has like three or more kids knows. Like, I
Yeah.
think the more you add, just the crazier it gets in like both good and bad ways sometimes.
Yep.
But, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna figure it out, right? I'm a mom. That's what we do. We just go through it. We get it done, right?
Yep.
There's not an option to fail. And so you just figure it out kind of on the fly. And so for me, it was like I figured that I would just be able to work while my newborn napped. That was hilarious for me to think that because she refused to nap unless I was holding her, right? So I'm
Oh
like
yeah.
holding her and bouncing and we're rocking and I'm on calls and I'm like, what am I doing? This is crazy. Like I cannot keep going like this. Um, but so that was that shift.
Mm.
It was after I had had two kids already. I had lived the doctor's appointments, the, daycare pickups because somebody's sick. And then trying to rebalance everything, right?
Yeah.
With zero notice. Um, my husband's job is very in-person demanding, so he doesn't have those flexibilities. So it all fell on me, right? I was the default parent, like many moms are.
Yeah, same with that was my story too. And ironically, my third baby. And my husband was in running heavy equipment and construction. So I was a default parent too. And it's interesting when you're that default parent, the hoops that you have to jump through to make everything work. And somehow we manage to make it happen. But it's so nice when are able to have your own business and to be able to, it makes it easy. You're still juggling all the things, but it's interesting how that juggle shifts a little bit because now we have more control over our lives. Would you agree?
100%. So my youngest is no longer a newborn because all kids grow, right? So she is now 1 week shy of 3 years old. She is my first child to like require any additional support needs. So we've been doing speech therapy, and she had a session on yesterday. She had a session, and I didn't tell anybody that I was taking time off to go to my child's therapy appointment. I
You
just
just did it.
left when I needed to go. I met her therapist at daycare because that's what works for my family. Like
Mhm.
I my kids are not home full time. We don't homeschool. They go to public schools. My youngest goes to full-time daycare. That's what works for us. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I just left when I needed to, got to daycare. My daughter runs up, gives me a hug, gives her speech therapist a hug. We went in. I was fully present. I was able to be fully present for her speech therapy, work with her and her therapist. She's making great progress, and just the freedom to be present in those moments without this sense of what am I missing? How many hours am I going to have to give back to my boss? Like
Yeah.
I'm I am my boss. I know that if there's work that needs to be done and it's not getting done between 10:30 and 11:30 because I'm at speech therapy, it's going to get done at a different time. That's also
Maybe
convenient.
10:30 to 11:30 at night.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, it that I know we like jumped, we did like a timeline jump there, but I just wanted to let you know, like going back from that stress of how am I going to make all of this work
Mhm.
to now, like it just works. My
Right.
kids, their district doesn't have school on Mondays. I live in Colorado. Um, I took my two older kids. We dropped the youngest off at daycare because she's still two and I'm a mad woman. Um, Me and my oldest two kids on Monday drove up to Breckenridge. We skied for the day. I had
That's
a
awesome.
conference call that I had to take. It was the only time that everybody, like the schedules aligned.
Mhm.
So I sat at the base of the mountain while my 6 and 9-year-old skied independently, and I was on a video conference call with an architect firm and a global construction firm
I
for this
love it.
meeting. And I was like, what a surreal moment. Like, never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined that on a Monday, I'm going to be working from the base of Breckenridge Ski Resort while, two of my kids ski, and I'm on a conference call with a contractor that I had wanted to work for who now works for me. It was
That's so awesome.
so wild and such
I
a
love it.
cool moment.
Ah, that's so amazing. What do you think was the scariest part for you? Because I remember you talking about, you know, being very hesitant about leaving work, and which everyone is, right? Because we have this general sense of safety in a way where like somebody else is calling the shot, somebody else is telling us what to do, which we've been used to going to the public school system, right? I mean, this is just the way society has built itself. So what would you say for you? What was the scariest part of leaving your 9 to 5, even though you knew now that you were going out on your own? What do you think was the hardest part for you to leave that behind?
Oh, that's a great question because it's a process, right? And
Mhm.
you have to believe in yourself. And one of the things that personally, I don't remember if I read it or heard it on a podcast, but one of the things that helped me the most was hearing the phrase like, you can rebuild the life you have right now. You already know how to do
Mm.
this. I already knew how to be a construction project manager. I was really good at it. I'm still good at it. But if like that sense of knowing that, we all have this fear of failure. So that sense of knowing that if I fail, I can go back and find the same job I have now, right?
Right.
Like I had worked at different companies, I had worked in different states. Like I knew I was comfortable and confident in my ability in the role that I had. So knowing that if things don't work out with my own business, I can
Mhm.
come back to this. I can redo this because I've done it my whole career.
Right.
Um,
And you took what you were doing, right, and went out on your own. So it wasn't like, I mean, yes, you kind of detoured with the writing and you started like a whole new thing and kind of venturing into something you like to do as a hobby, but you took what you were doing and replicated that into your own business, correct? Because
I
a
did.
lot of people get this idea that they have to do something completely new. So,
Yeah, I did. And that was like, like we talked about a little bit before, that was an aha moment for me where you're like, you don't have to recreate something, you don't have to be fully online. Like I think I was so hung up about the online component and not
mhm,
having a physical like work location
yep.
that it took me a while to process the fact that I like working in person. I like,
Mhm,
going out to job sites and visiting with clients and contractors and doing those in-person things. And once I got past the fact that like I don't have to try and do something just online. Like I can make a business that works for me, whatever that means for me.
yeah,
And like I said, for me, it means my kids go to this in-person public school that they love. And my
yeah,
youngest goes to an in-person daycare that feels like family and teaches her two languages. It's just finding that portion of balance that works for me and my family.
yeah.
And it's been awesome because I still get to do all the things that I love. Um, and now I just get to do honestly like even more of it. So being able to make the change to taking my previous, construction project manager role and looking at it like, how can I do this for myself? Um,
Mhm,
I don't want people to think that it's not a lot of work because it is a lot of work. And like I had years worth of experience, relationships that allowed me to be successful in making that
mhm,
change. Um, but I also had only been living in the geographic area where we live now for 7 years, which in the terms of a career isn't, you know, exceptionally long. Um,
right.
so I think the biggest thing for me personally in like what made the decision to leave, this is kind of bad, but honestly, like my old job just got so bad. And
Yeah.
I had made the decision that I was going to leave when I mentioned earlier that contractor that I was on the conference call
Yeah.
with at the ski resort. They were like my number one pick. I was going to go to another job. I had talked to them. I had been doing other interviews with other companies. And I was basically like just waiting for them
Hmm.
to tell me that they had a spot for me. They had this project that was coming in the fall, and we had kind of talked about my timeline being flexible. When I started to tell my one client that I was working really closely with on several of their projects, like, hey, I'm going to be making a change, they actually approached me and they're like, well, do you want to just come and work for us directly?
Mm.
And that was like, oh, yeah, maybe we could do that. Um,
Yeah, I love
I think,
that.
I think that was the time that I had reached out to you, like, hey, Tara, should I do this? Like, it's not online. And you were like, yeah, you can do that if that's what you want, right?
Yep.
And so that was it. But personally, like I knew I was not in the right spot for me. When you
Hmm.
start feeling like you have to make a choice between your job and your family. Like
Yeah,
it's just an icky feeling
it
because
is.
you're always going to pick your family. And for your job to make you feel like you have to consider them as a number one,
Yeah,
you hear it all the time, and people are like, every employee is replaceable. Em- Employers, and I don't mean that to be like degrading, right? Because I do think that there are employers who truly value their people and take
right,
care of their people. But at the end of the day, we're all replaceable from an employment standpoint, right?
right. Well, they don't hesitate for a second. If you don't meet their needs as an employee anymore, you could show up to work and sorry, you don't have a job anymore. They don't take you into consideration that most employers don't give you a 2 week notice when you're going to get laid off. You show up and you're locked out of your computer. So, there's so many of us that that worry about our employer and whatnot. So it's backwards when it comes to that. So yeah.
It is. And then to feel like, you know, you are sacrificing at all with your family and your ability to provide for them in any capacity, right? Like
Mm.
financial, emotional time, like a lot of moms are just so drained from being the primary parent. And don't get me
Mhm.
wrong, like I'm still drained. Like I know from some of your recent posts, like you are too, right? But to have the weight of an external
Yeah.
stressor off and
Yeah.
like just be dealing with your own stresses that you kind of, you know,
That you're in control of because you're not worried that you're going to get fired if you show up to work the next day and you haven't been on your game, because life happened, you
because
know?
my 3-year-old, almost 3-year-old, decided she wanted to be awake from 2 to 4 a.m. Right.
Yeah.
And so I didn't actually start work until 10:30 or 11. Right.
Hmm. Right.
My boss didn't care. My boss was like, girl, I know you're tired. Just have a sit, have a little rest, come back when you're ready, because trying to force yourself to work when mentally you can't just creates
Exactly.
another level of stress, right? So
Right.
then you just get stuck
Exactly.
in this cycle.
No, and that's just it. And I think so many people get stuck in the cycle of, you have to abide by these rules that society has set forth. You have to go to work and you have to worry about being fired if you're late. And it's like these jobs don't take being a mom into consideration. I mean, I remember when I was in my 9 to 5, I had, the 2 kids to begin with, because it was my third baby when I decided to stay home, but it was the 2 kids to begin with. And they were little, and you'd try to leave the house, and all of a sudden they'd have a blowout, and you'd have to, change them because you're not going to go and put them in the car in their diaper and it's up their back. And jobs just don't work in, or employers don't take into consideration that, life happened and I'm 5 minutes late. Sorry, I mean, life happens, and always feeling like you're walking on eggshells, worrying about losing it at any point in time. And I think that that's something that a lot of women, there's the stress over that. I mean, even if they show up to work every day and they love their job, they still know that that's something that could happen at any time. Or, children get sick or whatever. And you like look at COVID. I remember COVID being a huge thing where if a family member was exposed, you couldn't go to work for 3 weeks. And
Yeah.
like what? And you got a bunch of kids and it's going around your whole house. It could have been, and I understand that employers had some understanding during that, but it was still you didn't have paid vacation, you weren't getting paid. And so there was a lot of that stress too, where like with what we're able to do with our own business, we're able to make the changes where if we can't work until 10 or 11 a.m. or whatever, we can make it up in the evening, some way, somehow. Or I don't know how you do it being you're kind of in a physical capacity or whatever, but I would imagine that there's still, you can do paperwork, you can do invoicing, things like that, at night.
Yeah,
What would you
absolutely.
say has been, so you said your first client more or less came up to you and approached you, which is how it happened for me as well, my first client. And that was kind of how I even realized that I could have that kind of flexibility, the freelancing. And in fact, when I started working with him, I didn't even know that I was freelancing. Like I just didn't realize exactly what it was. But so he came to me, and then anytime after that, it was just about talking about my business. It was about just having a conversation with somebody and letting them know what I did. And the people that were interested let themselves be known. How have you, being that you're kind of working in the physical capacity and the local capacity, do you do cold outreach? Do you advertise? Because building an online business requires obviously a different tactic than being in person. So how do you, or how have you worked on establishing your clients? Because I try to tell a lot of people, especially bookkeepers, graphic designers, things like that, that they can work with clients online or offline. Like it's preference, but there's
Mhm.
there's customers everywhere. There's clients everywhere. And some people like have this hang up or hesitation that they have to hard sell. So how has it been for you when you're getting your clients, connecting with your clients?
That's a great question. I may not be the best person to answer that one because I really primarily just have the one client still. Like
Okay.
the vast majority of my work has been with that one client.
Okay.
Um, it has grown, like my work with them has grown
Hmm.
substantially,
Okay.
which is a huge compliment to me, right?
Yeah.
And the work that I'm doing with them. So I've actually had to add two other contract employees within the last year. So my business is literally like 1 year, 1 month old, almost to the day. So
Okay. So, but that's okay. So you've had
yeah,
one client.
I've had one
This,
client.
and you haven't had to do any client acquisition. So this is
I
even better
haven't.
then, because I'll tell people you might only need one, two, three clients, right? I've had the same client for 10 years. And a lot of people think that if you're going to be freelancing and looking for clients, that it's like a revolving door, like selling, people get hung up on the MLM thing, like, oh, I have to
Oh
sell
yeah.
to all my friends and family and I have to, be posting all the time and whatnot. But one client has been for 13 months for you. So you haven't had to do client acquisition then.
I have not had to do client acquisition. I have excellent client retention. My client
That's
loves
awesome.
working with me. And yeah, so I've increased my capacity to be able to take on more with that client. I have done some cold calling because what you just said is a great point. The one of the gals that works with me, I have one lady and one man that work with me now, both contract employees as well, because they want to work on their own terms too, and
Yeah.
just it's really cool to be able to provide an opportunity that's mutually beneficial, right? Like
No, wild.
it's so wild, and like the more you're in it, the more opportunities you see literally everywhere.
Yeah.
Like the one guy was like, "Oh man, where are we going next?" And I'm like, "I don't know, what do you got, right? Like, what do you want my help with? You're helping me on this huge project right now." So the lady that's helping me, she does more of she loves like marketing and that kind of, she's much more skilled in that than I am and
Mhm.
much more patient than I am. So for me personally, she doesn't have any, well, she has very limited background in construction. Um, and so finding skills that complement my skills was also helpful for me, right? Like
Mhm. Yep.
I can do more or less some of my bookkeeping and numbers, but like trying to make something pretty, I don't care. I
Right.
don't I don't love that. So she's done like some marketing proposals, she's done some cold calls or like cold emails. We've proposed on some other projects with local municipalities, which are like publicly published, but
Mhm.
also that's an area of my job that I was already doing, right?
Mhm.
So now
Right.
I just have somebody else doing it with my support. But we had a meeting last week with another city just to get feedback on our proposal because we didn't get it, right? Which
Mhm.
I told her, I'm like, we're probably not qualified for this, but if you want to put it together, let's go for it. So she's also helped push me because I wouldn't have proposed on some of these things. And she's like, well,
Mhm.
let's do it. So she's pushed me to get out there more, which is great too, because it just helps with some of the visibility on my company name, right? Like I may not be the right fit for them for the project that we proposed on, but maybe they
Mhm.
have something in 6 months and they're like, oh, hey, would you be interested in taking a look at this for us? So for me, it's more about just making those connections
Mhm.
organically and not making it feel like a chore. And
Yeah.
then also like really working in ways that I like to work. That's
Mhm.
honestly that's been my favorite part of working for myself is choosing who I get to work with.
Yeah.
So not even just like the when you work, which as a mom, I think you have to have
Right.
because let's be honest, we don't even have control over that. I have my own business and I still don't get to choose when I work all of the time, right? My kids are a
Right.
big factor in that. Um, but choosing who I work with, like my client, everybody over there is a parent in one, like some of them are older parents, so they have older kids, and then some of them like are with like my age group, right? Like with younger
Mhm.
kids. So knowing that I want to work with people who understand that, hey, I'm going to keep my camera off for our meeting this morning because I slept 2 hours last night because I was cleaning up a kid's vomit, right?
Right. Oh yeah. Gotta
Choosing,
love that.
yeah, I know. It's always at like 1 in the morning too. Like
Always.
4 or 5, like I normally get up at like 5 or 6. So like, why is it right in the middle of the sleep period? So choosing like who you work with has been so nice for me. And the ability to pick clients, projects, and coworkers that really align with like not only my personality, but my values
Yeah.
has been so awesome. That was one of the biggest things that pushed me to leave my company was just realizing
Mhm.
like how different my values were. Um,
Mhm.
I have a husband who I love. Most of those people that I worked with previously were divorced or in unhappy marriages. And like,
Mm.
I didn't
Yeah.
want to be around that, right? Like,
Yeah.
I like my family and I want to spend time with them. So being able to just have more control over who you spend your time with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, I remember being so frustrated too. I mean, I liked my coworkers to a certain extent, but there was always drama. I always felt like I was always interrupted. There was always, some sort of, food being brought in and parties. And I mean, and I know that that was to just kind of help get through the day or whatnot, but I was like, there was so much time actually being wasted. And I was like, I could do this from home and be so much more productive. And which, when I did start working, doing the same exact thing or, a piece of my job, I was able to do it in 2 hours versus eight, and it just made such a world of difference, for me. So, what would you say? So, I only just got a couple more questions here for you and I'll let you go. But for you, when you first started, you decided you were going to go out on your own. What do you think was the biggest hang up like to getting started for you? Because doing what you're doing, you probably needed permits and you needed to, do all the paperwork and stuff. Was it as hard as you thought it was going to be, or once you got into the process of it, did it go much smoother and it was less than you needed or thought you needed? Like, was that a big hang up for you or a big factor for you?
It was a big factor for me, but it ended up not being a big factor.
Yeah.
Like we make things more complicated than they need to be, and we build them up in our brains to be scarier than they are. I
Yeah.
think everybody who's like listening probably has one task that they've been putting off for like way
Mhm.
longer than it would take to just get it done, right?
Yeah.
Me too. Um, so there was definitely like a lot of hesitation in getting started. I had
Yeah.
to file paperwork. I was like, oh my gosh, how much is that going to cost? Because, like finances are a real thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, so, how much is it going to cost to register my LLC? You don't know what you don't know. And so
Mhm.
part of the challenge was I know you and I talked through some of that a little bit, and
Yep.
that was helpful too. But also like getting connected with a CPA in my state, right? Like, hey,
Hmm.
here's what I want to do. They're like, oh, we can file your LLC paperwork for you. They were able to do all the paperwork for me for a cost that I felt was very reasonable, like
Hmm.
was affordable for me. If it wasn't, I probably would have just gone and called somebody else, because in my
Hmm.
job you always get like at least three prices to compare, right? So fortunately they were a referral also from somebody that I knew that had worked with them, and then their pricing was fine. So had them go ahead and file my paperwork. Insurance, I was super worried about how expensive that would be.
Hmm.
But I had also done like a small sewing business prior, like a hobby one. So I had gone through a little bit of that business insurance. Again, like I think we overcomplicate it. Again, of
Hmm.
course, like depending on what your services are. Um,
Right.
but I was able to get it through the same insurer who we have our like home and auto stuff through anyways. So got that set up. Um, Contract paperwork with me and the work that I was doing was provided through my client. It was all through them anyways. And I mean, I could go back and look, but I think in total, I maybe spent maybe $2,000 to get
Hmm.
all of my paperwork filed, set up, registered with the state, and my insurance in place for a year. And that included increased auto limits because it was required by my client. So, um,
Right. Because you're physically going to locations and things like that. So
yeah,
probably more than obviously like an online business or typical business. But would you say overall the process was probably easier than you had worked up in your head?
it was way easier and way faster than
Okay.
what I had worked up in my head. Absolutely. So
Because
I
I
definitely,
remember we actually had a call. I remember
yeah,
you and Nicole and I had jumped on a call. We were like discussing, what does this look like? How does this work? How does whatever? And I remember you being a little bit on the anxious side about it, but it wasn't, I didn't feel like it was too much longer after that period of time where you were like, guess what? I got my first client and I'm like, we just went from that to that. Like, you know.
once I made the decision, like, hey, I'm going to leave and start my own business, I'm not going to wait for this construction company that I thought I wanted to work for, who now
Mhm.
actually works for me. Um, which is just also like such a cool thing personally. Um,
Yeah.
Here's a little side story that's kind of fun. So, baseball season is just kicking off, right? It's been opening
Mhm.
day for several teams recently. So this contractor that I had interviewed with, they were my top pick for, who was going to be my new employer. Um, we had this contract. I reached out to them. Hey, I don't know if this is something you guys would be interested in looking at. It's smaller than some of your other work. Oh yeah, we have a team that does that. So, um, they looked at it, they bid on it, they ended up being the awarded contractor, so they are now working for me. Um,
Mm,
they reached
that's
out,
awesome.
like talk about the power of manifesting and just like believing in things. I was
Hmm.
driving, I think it was a week ago, maybe 2 weeks now, driving over to my clients for a meeting or a walk or something. And I'm like, man, it's getting nice out. We should go, me and the family should go to some baseball again this year. That was so fun last year. We really enjoyed going to a couple games. Later that afternoon, that same day, I got an email from the contractor inviting me to go to their suite for opening day of the
Wow.
baseball. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, I would love to. And so that was
That's
another
awesome.
surreal moment. Like it was just so cool as I was there sitting inside the suite as it's snowing out in Denver for baseball, thinking like, if I worked for this company, like if I was their employee, there's no way I would be at this suite at this baseball game today.
Right.
So being my own boss has like brought so many new opportunities for me, both personally and professionally. So it's been really cool.
That's
Uh,
awesome. So I want to just quick wrap it up here just
yeah,
in a minute. But what I love about this is because I, of course, talk about, the daycare thing. Like, there's a lot of moms out there who don't, they feel like they're stuck. They don't have a choice in bringing their kids to daycare. And for you, maybe felt that way at the time for your job, but now it's like if you want to go get your daughter from daycare for the afternoon, you can, right? It's a girl, right? Your
Yeah, my
daughter,
youngest,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. It's like you have the power to like up and go, but it works for you. And I think that's the important thing that I want to stress is that this can look any way we want it to, whether it's having clients online and working from home and being able to work with your kids next to you, or it can be freelancing out in the world with your child still going to school and daycare. Like my problem is always with the fact when women feel forced, right? Like they don't have a choice. And so anybody that follows me will hear me talk about it a lot. And mostly I talk about it not as a shaming tactic if you're bringing your child to daycare. It's more that if you're feeling forced to do it, like I want women to know, like you have an option. You can come home and do this, or they can do like you and still freelance if they love to be out in the world, but yet still have control over if they're sick and need to stay home without feeling guilty, if they want to take an afternoon off to go skiing with your older kids or whatever. Like there's so much control that you have over your life once you take the plunge and start your own business, and whatever that looks like for each individual woman. Like I love to tell these stories. We also have all Jessica. I think you had met her at some point or another on one of the calls, but like she quit her job, started freelancing in something she hadn't ever done. She did it for a year, was really successful at it. And then she took that as experience. Now she had her own experience and she went and got herself a six-figure job at her husband's company. And it was like she wouldn't have gotten that job had she not freelanced for the year and gave herself that experience. So there's so much versatility to this, and being able to choose what you do, when you do it, how you do it, where you do it, and how much you get paid. And I love the flexibility that we have. So for you, for somebody that has done it now for a year and 1 month, and you tried to dabble into something that wasn't the right fit. And again, I talk about that as well. You hear me talk a lot about it doesn't matter if you're getting paid doing it. If you don't enjoy it, it's not going to work. It's not going to last. It's not going to fulfill you, right? So now you're doing something that fulfills you. You're doing what works for your family. What would you say to the mom who is watching this, who feels stuck in her 9 to 5, but is scared to start something new? Now, you started the writing, you realized it wasn't the right fit, you moved to what you were used to. What would you say to them if they're scared to start, knowing that you could pivot or you could go back to a job? Like, what would be your words of wisdom to encourage them?
Don't wait. Don't wait.
Don't wait.
That's it. Like
Yeah.
the day that I gave notice at my work, I had made up my mind. I was 150% confident in my decision. I don't know if you even knew this. I think you did. I was driving into my work to give them my notice, and my husband called to tell me that he had been fired from his job of 9 years with no warning.
That's right.
I
I do
was
remember that.
speechless. Like, I didn't know what we were going to do, but I wished that I had already started my business because I knew that my income with my employer was limited. It was
Mhm.
fixed. There was not an opportunity for me at the time and place where I was at that time to make significant changes. And I knew that if I had started my business 6 months earlier,
Mhm.
if I needed another client, I would have found one, right?
Right.
Like if I needed another contract with my current client, it would have become available. Since making that decision and leaving, I have never, I mean, don't get me wrong, we ate a lot of peanut butter and jelly and ramen for like the first 6 weeks. So there were sacrifices being made.
Right.
But I've never regretted it. I have never once wished for a boss, for the stability. What the flexibility and consistency has provided has more than made up for that feeling of perceived safety from an employer, right? I know a lot of people are like, they like counting on the fact that every Friday morning a certain amount is going to be deposited into their bank account, and
Until it's not,
until it's not.
like your
And
husband.
exactly. And I set up my business to be able to do that in a way that worked for me and my family. Um, but there's no limit. There's no
Yeah.
limit to what I can earn now, and there's no limit to what I can do with my time.
Yeah, I love that. I talk a lot about, or we see online a lot of people talking about multiple streams of income. You should have multiple streams of income. And for most people, they mean having multiple businesses and multiple, actual streams of income. But what people fail to realize is that when you're freelancing, if you have five different clients, you have five different streams of income without having to run multiple different businesses and without being split in many different directions where you can focus on your one business and grow it. So I love that you said, like, if you need to, you can go get a client, anytime you want, you can grow it as you want. And now you've actually hired two contractors, and now that if you want to continue to grow your business, you can just add another person or add another two people, and you're in control of that. And so I love that so much. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Erica, for coming. Is there any last things that you want to share before we
Um,
go?
yeah, so this is really cool for me, and I know I shared it with you via Messenger, but at the end of the day, like a lot of people, I think, are held back because of finances and that fear of what if, how do I do it? So I started my business in March of 2024. In about 9 months of 2024, I billed just shy of $155,000 in contracts to my one client.
So
Um,
wild. In
this year,
9 months.
in 9 months, yeah. So I replaced my full-time income working part-time and on my terms. And with, more freedom than I could have ever imagined and more fun than I could have ever
Yeah.
imagined. Just this year,
And we're only in April. So we're today, right now, as of recording, it's April 9th,
uh
2025.
April 9th, 2025. I have a single contract, which is kind of a one-off thing, but again,
Yeah.
partnering with someone else who can help me, right, increase
Yeah.
my business's capacity. I have one single contract for $144,000, in addition to
Amazing.
one, two, three, four, five, six other contracts with that same client. So
Right.
total contracts currently in 2025 is sitting at $355,000.
Oh, that's so crazy. And we're only 4 months in.
We're only 4 months in, and
That's
that's
so
one
wild.
client.
That's so wild. Now imagine if you add another client or two clients or like, I mean,
My
amazing.
so my goal this year, my husband has since found another job in his same field, but he is so tired. He's tired of.
Yeah.
I want him to do your intro course. Actually, I was like, I need Joe to get in this. Um, But my goal is like I need to figure out how to replace his income so that
Yeah.
he has the capacity to dream, like to think of
Yeah.
something else. Because a lot of time I think you just need that space to be able to imagine what it could be
Right.
like. And now
Yeah.
he's seen me do it and he's like, that's really cool.
That's so awesome. I love it. Thank you so much for that update because I really do hope that hearing stories like yours encourages people because I do think, again, there's a lot of people that are stuck on this idea that it has to be brick and mortar or physical or that it has to be online or like this can look any way we want it to. And I think that that's the important thing that we need to take into consideration. I mean, even if you start a cleaning company, or a laundry company, like that's freelancing. A lawn mowing company, it's freelancing. Like anything that you're doing on your own by providing a service is freelancing. So whether it's online, offline. Like it's amazing what we can do when we allow ourselves, like you say, to dream and allow ourselves to actually take action on those dreams and turn them into something. And then once we get there, like to be able to look at like, holy smokes, look at what I achieved. The confidence level, I would imagine your confidence level has shot through the roof too. I mean, you seem like a different person to me, even from when we first started speaking, when you first joined Freedom Accelerator. Like, it's just, it's wild. Do you feel different?
I do, yes.
Yeah.
And if you've heard the phrase, which everybody has, like fake it till you make it. Some sometimes I lean into that. Like I'm in
Yeah.
a, I'm in a male, like heavily white male dominated field
Yeah.
in construction. And sometimes I'll just tell myself, like, because I'll work with guys who I know I'm better at my job than they are at theirs. Like, I'm not trying to be like overconfident or rude or anything, but like
Mhm.
I'm good at what I do. And they just have this confidence about them that they carry in. Sorry for like any white males that might be listening from a weird standpoint, but like they just have this confidence that like they're unstoppable.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'll just have to like tap into like, okay, I'm just gonna tap into like my white male in construction confidence. Like, if you can do this, like I can definitely do it better.
That is so awesome. I love that. I love that so much. Well, thank you so much, Erica. I've kept you a long time. I do have one thing for you though, if you want to hang out for just a minute, but thank you everyone for tuning in.
Thank you
Make
so much,
sure you
Tara.
follow our YouTube channel and watch the other interviews that we're going to be putting up there. So again, thank you, Erica.
Thank you.